And welcome to this week's Roll of 24 for the week of 13 April through 19 April 2026, part of John's Eclectic Photo Time Story Adventure. In this week's Roll of 24, once again we have an eclectic mix of various photographs that we've captured. Here we have a picture of some street photography. Charlie and I went out to Meridian State Park near Meridian, Texas. We had a bunch of rain last week, and so the next morning, on Monday morning, got up and found this beautiful mushroom growing right along my deck. And while we were out there at Meridian State Park waiting for the sun to set, captured this photo of this gentleman over here, and he actually caught a fish right there that he's getting ready to take off the hook. And so the first picture inside the series that you're going to see, I did take with the RF 100 macro lens from Canon. I did do a 25 stack, and then a good 12 subsequent pictures I took out there with the Canon R5. I have the battery grip on this, and I was using the 50 mil to do some flowers and to do some street photography. And so as you saw in the image over my left shoulder was a mushroom. I'm going to call it a false oyster. As you can see, I asked ChatGPT to identify it. They said that they could not identify wild mushrooms. So as you can see, there's the actual official name underneath there, and I'm not even going to try and enunciate that. So anyways, as I mentioned, it had been raining for 3 or 4 days, almost constantly, sometimes just a drizzle. And here is the setup of this. I took the macro lens and the light and put the light in several different places. Here the light is actually coming down on top, and I probably took 8 or 10 series. Each series is 25 photos, so that's a process in and of itself to edit those. First go into Photoshop, stack them all up, see which ones are cleanest, and then you got to take the time and pull the trigger and delete almost all of them out once you've stacked them up. So I am trying to do a better job of enunciating these different type of plants that I'm presenting here in my roll of 24. So I went into the dictionary on my phone. So this is a common zinnia. So this was actually taken with my Apple iPhone. Lovely bride, I and Charlie were out walking around the subdivision this day, and I didn't take my camera with me, but I do have my cell phone with me, and it's a new Apple iPhone 17 Pro Max, so it does come out with a 48 megabit file. Did make sure I took this not in live view but in portrait mode, and captured probably about 10 or 15 of them. I did not stack them, but this was the one. It was a little breezy out, and since I don't know how yet to put this in the manual mode, this was what the phone determined. And so for this week's purposeful picture, once again, I pull these out of my old lens bags that I don't carry my lenses in. And so it was interesting that it says basically like street photography, photograph of a stranger. And so here's my stranger. And then my extra credit challenge I challenged myself was to use a prop. And so I've now gotten in the habit. I have 2 different t-shirts now, one with this yellow rose that you can see the store clerk. So the store clerk was a stranger to me other than asking her for my order. So I asked her to hold it up. I wanted to see what it would look like on the front versus the back. And so she did, and I said, well, I'm going to take a couple pictures just so I can see what this looks like in the front. And she was a little hesitant, but agreed in the end. And so I snapped off a couple frames. So here is a just a picture of Charlie and I. Once again, this is off my Apple iPhone. And we were laying back out there in the backyard. And I laid down, and Charlie jumped up in the lounge next to me. And he did pretty good. And he was just laying around. He came over, licked my face a couple times. And I said, okay, thanks, that's enough. And so I pushed him back over into his chair. And I'm sitting there listening to a storybook on Audible, and he's got his face over there. So I just took the phone and turned it around and turned it into selfie mode. And he took, probably about 5 or 6 pictures. This was the cutest one where he looks the most relaxed. It's not the dog days of summer yet, but it looks like Charlie's getting ready and prepared for, it's only April. So we'll see what happens in June, and once he starts playing in the pool, and see if he enjoys these lounge chairs. And so after, the next day, Charlie and I went over to the Killeen Dog Park, but they still had the lock on the gate. I don't know if it's because the park people were running late or because there was still a lot of standing water in the large dog park part. So we went over to a neighboring town called Harker Heights, and their dog park was open, and you can see here on the ground it's pretty well dry. And once again, I was caught unawares, and so this is another Apple iPhone picture. And anyways, now Charlie's 52 pounds, and so when I see him walking around with other dogs, and I know how much he eats, which is a lot, but I'm looking at this dog that he met. I didn't get its name. He was only there for about 15, 20 minutes. But I'm just wondering, how big is that dog? And thank goodness Charlie's not going to get that big. And so now we're still on April 16th after the dog park. And now I'm using the Canon EOS R5 with the 50 millimeter f1.2. And you can see that it's 6:15 in the evening. Nice sun coming in. We did have some clouds, but there was a lot of big breaks, and I grabbed the camera and grabbed Lovely Bride and Charlie, and we started for a walk around the subdivision. And thank goodness most of my neighbors all have flowers either halfway or along the sidewalk. I didn't go up straight up to anybody else's front door or anything, but anyways, caught this very sand dune wallflower that was in these people's front yard in a flower bed, as you can see the car in the background there. So I did crouch down and capture this lovely flower. So this is one of those flowers that we see all the time and we just really don't pay attention to them. The flowers, when they're open, are only about the size of a dime. And down here in Texas, this is false garlic. And once again, I have the Canon R5 with the 50 millimeter lens. Not ideal for flower taking, but it worked. And these were all handheld. I do have a high rate of shutter speed on these because it was windy. So this is 1250 for the shutter speed, and you can see the ISO of 6400 because I wanted the f13 so I can get most of it in focus. So I had to up the speed, and then of course when you up the speed, it's going to get dark. So up the ISO and a little bit of Lightroom denoise, and I think overall I would not make this a 5-foot by 5-foot print, but it looks nice. So while I'm over there trying to capture the false garlic blowing back and forth in the breeze, Lovely Bride and Charlie kept on moseying down the sidewalk. I say mosey because they didn't want to get too far in front of me. It's not a race. And Lovely Bride found this magnolia petal. And this was, so I'm shooting from my height at 6 foot. And so this flower, bloom, or petal was probably about 4 feet. And once again, slight breeze. You can see I'm at 1250, ISO 4000. This was auto ISO. I did not set it. The camera took care of that. I did want the f13 because I wanted as much of the bloom in focus. And so it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to let the camera determine the ISO, and I'm going to set the other two things. But I just love how this turned out. Just a beautiful flower. So here is my version of a little bit of street photography. Once again, people say that street photography is you taking pictures of others without them knowing you are, which is kind of hard sometimes when you're carrying a big bulky camera like the R5 with the battery pack and a 50 millimeter lens with the lens head sticking out. But this gentleman was focused down on the ground and he was just slowly pacing along through the subdivision. And so he passed us by. I did not get any pictures from the front because, once again, I wanted to not have him look at me while I'm taking the picture. And so he passed by and snapped off a bunch of pictures and didn't realize till I was processing these that truck back there. Boy, it sure did get sideswiped pretty bad there. I'm surprised they're able to even open up that driver's door anymore. And the truck itself looks like a fairly new truck. What a shame. So lovely bride and I and Charlie are still out here wandering around our subdivision. It's usually about a mile and a half, almost a 2 mile walk that we take up and down different streets. And once again, here's a common zinnia, and this was growing in another person's yard. There is no picture of a car or anything in the background. And so this time, once again, the wind was blowing, so the speed is up, the ISO is up, but in order to capture as much of the frame and focus, as you can see, the ISO is 20,000 because the sun is setting down. But once again, I just use Lightroom for my denoise. I don't use any of the other programs out there. I just love how I'm able to see the hairs down there on the stem and the really good separation between the flower and the background. So I was never into really horticulture. I did want to become a park ranger when I was younger, but never did pursue that. One, because you have to know so much Latin in order to identify all the trees and everything else, and I'm not good with a foreign language. But my understanding is this is a Texas lantana from, I got that from the Lady Bird Johnson website down there in Texas, and just a really pretty picture. Once again, I've got the speed set at 1250 because it's still windy out here. And I still have it set at F13 because I wanted to try and get as much of this bundle into focus as I could. And so this time you can see the ISO is 25,600. And this is at 6:25 in the evening. So the sun's going down, but it was still dark. And once again, I had to have that high shutter speed in order to capture so it prevent any blurring. All right, so here is another batch of flowers in another neighbor's yard. And I did look under the Webster Dictionary to try and see if they could enunciate it for me. They did not, but it looks like it is Killarwi. And originally it only had one R, but according to the Webster Dictionary, it's supposed to have two R's. So this is a Killarwi. Anyways, it was a really cute batch of flowers. And as you can see here, I'm at 1250 because it's still windy out there on our walk. I'm still using the 50 mil. And so the camera, once again, set the ISO at 25,600 in order to capture this. And when it does the ISO like that, it's putting it to a neutral gray. And then I could make the further adjustments inside of Lightroom. But just a really, really pretty batch of flowers. And so this photograph, once again, my take on street photography, and this person lives probably about 4 houses away from me. And the reason why I set it up and captured it this way with the truck, I just liked how the 3 colored cars in the driveway meshed in there, the green, the blue, the red, and then the boat. I did take out his license plate, so you can't see that. But yeah, a little crowded over there, but I thought it was a nice composition for street photography as we were working our way back towards the house because not much else was going on. The sun had set. You can see through the trees. We got an ugly yellow sky coming in. I don't know if there's sand coming in from out west or if that's sand all the way from China coming through, but the sky turned kind of dirty. All right, so we're finishing up our walk. This is a Arizona ash that's actually in my front yard. And so now Webster Dictionary did a great job. This is a samaras, is how they enunciated this word, samaras. And that is the seeds that are on this female plant. And I had another one on the left, but it died. Well, I don't know if it got struck by lightning, but it died, and so I cut it down. But then all of a sudden, new shoots are coming up underneath. But anyways, this was the ones that have these seed pods on them is from the female tree, because the article I read said that's why people try and get the male tree. Now, I'm not sure when you're at the garden store, hey, I'd like to get a female and male tree. What kind of Arizona ashes do you? I don't know how you can tell on a baby tree if it's male or female. So, in addition to the Arizona ash, that's a female, we also have a pecan tree on the east side of our yard. And I actually, once again, went in and even though it has the letter C at the beginning, I would think that'd be catkins, but according to Merriam-Webster's enunciation portion of their dictionary, it's called Atkins. So these petals that are coming down, and I will say one thing about at least pecan trees, they all produce these Atkins, and I'm fortunate enough that my neighbor, he has 2 pecans in the front and another one in the back, because when I was researching pecan trees, you're supposed to have another pecan within 150 feet so they can pollinate each other. So while they all put out these Atkins, they do need to pollinate. And so the next several pictures are Charlie and I up at Meridian State Park. And it was a 3-pronged reason to go up there. Is one, Monday morning, we went Sunday. Monday morning, there was supposed to be the last look at like 4:25 in the morning of the comet. That was a one-time event coming through our solar system. And then we were also going to try and shoot some Milky Way. And then in Monday morning, I was going to start practicing some light painting. So no comet with at all because it got cloudy. So of course with the clouds there was no Milky Way. And so in next week's roll of 24, you'll see the results of the light painting. So while Charlie and I were waiting for the sun to set, I was using the R5 Mark II, and a lot of the photos that I took were over on the shore, and I was using the 100 to 500 to capture a bunch of people, the gentleman fishing, a little kid over there, and some other scenes of what was going on around the lake. And once again, so we checked in at the lake at around 2 o'clock, and then we just sat around and relaxed until sunset. So we were set up on the west side of the lake so that we could shoot down at 152 degrees for the Milky Way core. Of course, we never saw the Milky Way core, but after we got the tent set up and got everything where we wanted it, Charlie and I drove 25 minutes around to the east shore so that we could capture the sun setting. So one of the things I like to do every time I go out, well, I like to do it, but do a little proof of life. So where I was at out here at Meridian Lake, or Meridian State Park over at the lake, this campground area, you have no cell reception. So I took this selfie, and while I went in and texted it to the family to let them know that I had arrived and everything was good. Eventually, it did go off when Charlie and I drove around to the east side of the lake. We got up a little bit of elevation, and it captured a signal. So it was just sitting in my phone waiting to go off. And I do try and, I call them proof of life, proof of presence. Depends on what I'm shooting. Sometimes I'm like, I wonder if people would think this is AI. So I better take a picture of me with my equipment behind me to prove up that I was out there and this is my picture. So that's what this is. So when I originally booked the campsite, I wanted to be at 31, which was over on the other side, just about 50 feet away. And I'm glad that it was already occupied. Well, they said it was. Nobody ever showed up that night that I was out there. But your tent is out there in the open, which I really wasn't too excited about. And so over here at campsite 30, there's a clearing back here about 20 feet away from the fire pit, barbecue, and picnic table area. And there is another area that's closer to the picnic table, but it's closer to a walking trail. There's a trail that goes all the way around the Meridian Lake. And when people pass by, they're basically 15 feet away from your table. And when I showed up out there was actually 3 people sitting down at my campsite eating a meal at my picnic table, and they saw me and packed up and left. So what's interesting about Meridian State Park and several other parks throughout Texas, they were actually created by what's called the CCC. This was part of the I don't want to call it return back to work, but to after the Depression, to get people gainfully employed. In 1933, the state bought up this property, and the CCP came in from 1933 to 1935 and created the earthen dam that you're going to see in another photograph. But this was the first structure that the CCC crew built, which was the headquarters, barracks, and mess hall. You can see the fireplace out there. And so this is the primary structure to convert it into restrooms now, but it is still a meeting hall for out there at the lake. So as I mentioned earlier, Charlie and I got out there around 2 o'clock and got set up and came back around over to the east side, and they have this fishing dock out here. And once again, we were just sitting out there waiting for the sun to set. There were only a couple ducks flying around, not a whole lot of wildlife at this time of day. But this gentleman was out here fishing, and if you look down at the 5 o'clock, you go from his left hand and go down to the 5 o'clock position. I actually caught, it looks like a crappie from here, and it's flopping around on the deck, and it looks like he's reaching into his pocket to grab some pliers. So what was interesting is Charlie and I are sitting over at a picnic table, and probably 400 or 500 feet away, because I'm using 500 to capture him there. And he moseys on over and asked me, hey, the wife asked me to ask you if you wanted this largemouth bass we caught, seeing that you're out here camping. And so I captured these people. This is 618. I don't know if they walked all the way around. It's a 4-mile walk around the whole lake, I believe. It's an 87-acre lake on 554 acres is the total park size. And this is the earthen dam that was built back in 1933-34. The park opened up in 1935. And this place is 2 hours away from my house. It's pretty much out in the middle of nowhere. So I'm not sure how many people traveled out to a state park in 1935. So I guess somebody did. They built these parks up. There's a lot of these CCC parks throughout Texas. This is not the first one. Palo Duro Canyon up in the Panhandle is also a CCC built state park. But anyways, really pretty picture of this. So every state park, it seems, in Texas is a little bit different. Some of them have gates that you have to have the code in order to gain access. While Meridian State Park has a gate, they don't close it at night. And as you can see, this was at 6:20. Sun's still not setting yet. Anyways, I think people come in because the park rangers leave at 4:45. They close their office at 4:15, do one drive around, and then leave. And it was amazing how many people started showing up at 6:30, 7 o'clock just to walk in here, sit down. And as you can see, this was a father and a son. The father's just off to the left out of the frame. And I had this set up at 1/40 so I could catch the motion of the young man slowly casting out. So Charlie and, well, I don't know about Charlie, but I sat there and watched this young man trying to fish for about 15 minutes. He never caught anything, though. So in these last three pictures, the sunset has finally showed up. As you can see here, it says it's 7:56, and so the sun is finally going down. And I was fortunate. At one point, there was almost no clouds in the sky, and I was like, well, this is not going to be a very pleasant sunset. And then the sun came in. And so I did an HDR blend on this. I had the camera set up for 7 exposures. I didn't use the first one, nor did I use the last one, but I did take the other 5 and blended them together inside of Lightroom, and then made my adjustments from there accordingly. And here I'd switched over. I'd taken off the 100 to 500, and now I'm using the 15 to 35, and I have that on the R5 Mark II to capture these sunsets over the lake. Very pretty in my opinion. So that previous picture is I have the R5 Mark II set up on tripod, everything stabilized, so it's in focus, it's where I want it. And so I'm sitting there, and I'd taken maybe 7 or 8 sequences using the exposure bracketing. And so I'm just sitting there waiting for the sun to go further down, and I turn around, and that's one of my things. I get focused on the sun where it's going down, and I don't look left, right, north, south, whatever you want to call it. But I turned around to the left here, back towards that earthen dam, and so I pulled out the cell phone, and I snapped off this. Once again, it's in portrait mode, and I did set it up for the 16:9 aspect ratio, so I didn't have to do any stretching or anything. And I just loved how this glowed at this point into the lake, because it was ever changing. And as I just mentioned, everything's ever changing. So the sun in the previous picture had just came out and cast that beautiful gold glow across the lake. And then the sun sank down below a cloud getting over the horizon. And so I went from golden hour to blue hour in about a minute and a half, which is pretty indicative of Texas. Texas blue hour, when I use my Photo Pills app to figure out blue hour in the evening time, I'm like, it says blue hour. How come it's only 8.5 minutes? Sometimes, late in the summer, blue hour might be for 10 minutes. So that's one of the things you definitely got to be prepped, ready to go, because it went from golden hour to blue hour in a minute and a half. But I do love how these blue clouds are reflecting up off the lake and the earthen dam back there in the left-hand side. And so, once again, I did not do a very good job of capturing B-roll. The next little video clip is of the fire pit that Charlie and I enjoyed that Sunday night after we got back to our campsite, and just sat around and enjoyed a campfire and had a little bit of coffee, and finally bedded down around 10 o'clock at night. Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's roll of 24 for the week of 13 through 19 April 2026. Like I said again, this is an Eclectic Photo Time series, and we couldn't get more eclectic than this, than sunsets, people fishing, people running through my neighborhood, a bunch of flowers, and we started off with a mushroom. So once again, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Roll of 24. If you did, please consider subscribing and hit that like button. And I'll see you all again next Wednesday. Thank you. Bye.